When struggling florist Layla helps a grieving stranger at the market, she never expects to clash with and capture the heart of his powerful son. But can love bloom where trust was once betrayed? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you're watching from today. The morning sun shone down on Wildflower Blooms, the small flower shop on the corner of Maple and Pine Streets. Layla Carter wiped her forehead with the back of her hand as she arranged a bouquet of daisies and baby's breath. The bell over the door jingled, and her assistant Megan walked in with 2 cups of coffee. "Morning, boss," Megan said, placing one of the cups on the counter. "Thought you might need this. You look like you've been here for hours already." Layla smiled gratefully. "Thanks. I couldn't sleep. The rent's due tomorrow, and we're still short." "How short?" Megan asked, taking a sip of her coffee. "Too short," Layla sighed. "Almost $500. I was hoping the Henderson wedding would help, but they cancelled last week, remember?" Megan frowned. "What about that loan you applied for?" "Denied," Layla said, her voice flat. "Apparently, I'm not a good investment." She tried to keep the bitterness out of her voice, but it was hard. At 27, Layla had poured everything she had into this shop. It had been her dream since she was a little girl, watching her mother arrange flowers in their small apartment. After her father's business failed and he passed away from a heart attack, Layla had promised herself she would make it on her own, without depending on anyone. "Well, it's Sunday," Megan said brightly. "The market's busy today. Maybe we'll get some walk-ins if we put some arrangements out front." Layla nodded. "Good idea. I need to go to the market anyway. We're low on sunflowers and Mrs. Peterson always wants them in her weekly order." An hour later, Layla was walking through the bustling farmers' market. The weekend crowd moved around her, families and couples examining fresh produce, artisan bread, and handmade crafts. She headed toward her usual flower vendor, mentally calculating how much she could afford to spend. That's when she saw him. An elderly man sitting alone on a bench, his shoulders shaking slightly. In one hand he clutched a piece of paper, and in the other a small, somewhat wilted bouquet. He was crying quietly, as if trying not to draw attention to himself. Layla hesitated. She had her own problems, her own worries. She didn't have time to get involved in a stranger's troubles, but something about the man's dignified sorrow touched her heart. "Excuse me," she said softly, approaching the bench. "Are you all right? Can I help you with anything?" The man looked up, his blue eyes watery behind wire-rimmed glasses. He seemed embarrassed to be caught crying. "I'm fine," he said, his voice wavering. "Just an old fool having a moment." Layla sat down beside him. "I don't think you're a fool. Sometimes we all need a moment." The man studied her face, as if trying to determine if her kindness was genuine. He must have been handsome in his youth, Layla thought. Even now, in his late 70s, there was something distinguished about his features. "My name is William," he said finally. "William Hartley." "I'm Layla Carter," she replied with a warm smile. "Those are nice flowers, but they look a little tired. Were you trying to find something fresher?" William looked down at the small bouquet in his hand and sighed. "Today would have been my wife's birthday. Lily. She loved flowers. Every year I would buy her favorite ones from this market." His voice cracked. "This is the 3rd year without her, and I thought I could do it on my own. But when I got here, I couldn't remember which ones she loved most. I have this list." Third, he held up the piece of paper, which had several flower names written in shaky handwriting. "May I?" Layla asked gently, holding out her hand. William passed her the list and Layla read it carefully. "These are all beautiful choices," she said. "I'm actually a florist. Would you like me to help you find them?" Relief washed over William's face. "You would do that? For a stranger?" "Of course," Layla said, standing and offering her hand. "That's what flowers are all about, connecting people." For the next half hour, Layla guided William through the market, helping him select the freshest tulips, lilies, and roses. All the flowers on his list. As they walked, William began to open up, sharing stories about Lily. "We were married for 52 years, he said, his eyes brightening as he talked about her. "She was the most patient woman I've ever known. Had to be to put up with me all those years." Layla laughed. "She sounds wonderful." "She was," William nodded. "But I worry that I didn't appreciate her enough while she was here. I was always working, building the business. I thought I was doing it for her and our son, but now I wonder if I was just doing it for myself. Your son? Layla asked, selecting a particularly vibrant lily. Elias, William said, his expression growing more complex. My boy, he runs the company now, Hartley Investments. Layla nearly dropped the flower she was holding. Everyone in town knew Hartley Investments. It was one of the largest financial firms in the state, known for buying struggling businesses and either turning them around or dismantling them for parts. Her father had applied for a loan from them years ago, before his business failed. They had turned him down flat. I've heard of it, she said carefully. William seemed not to notice her reaction. Elias is a good boy, but he's like I was, all work, no life. After Lily died, I tried to tell him what I'd learned, that no amount of money is worth missing out on love, but he shut down. Thinks I'm just a sentimental old man. They finished selecting the flowers and Layla showed William how to arrange them properly. These are beautiful, William said, admiring the bouquet. Lily would have loved them. Thank you, Layla. You're welcome, she replied. Will you be all right now? William nodded, but then looked hesitant. Would you mind sitting with me for a bit? I'd like to tell you about her if you don't mind listening. Sometimes it helps to talk about her with someone new. Layla checked her watch. She had so much to do, orders to fill, finances to sort out, a rent payment to somehow manifest, but the hope in William's eyes made it impossible to say no. I'd love to hear about her, Layla said, sitting back down on the bench. 1 hour turned into 2 as William shared stories of his life with Lily, their first date, their wedding day, the birth of their son, their struggles and triumphs. Layla found herself laughing and occasionally wiping away a tear. By the time they parted, she felt as if she'd known Lily Hartley herself. You have a gift, young lady, William said as they prepared to part ways. Not just with flowers, but with people. You've made an old man's day brighter. Layla smiled. It was my pleasure, truly. Will you be okay getting home? My driver is waiting, William said, gesturing to a black town car parked nearby. Perhaps I'll see you here next Sunday? I'd like that, Layla replied, surprised to find she meant it. As William walked away, Layla suddenly remembered her original purpose at the market. She quickly bought the sunflowers for Mrs. Peterson and hurried back to her shop, where Megan was dealing with a small line of customers. Where have you been? Megan whispered as Layla took her place behind the counter. We've been swamped. I'm sorry, Layla said, quickly wrapping a bouquet for the waiting customer. I got caught up helping someone. The rest of the day passed in a blur of customers, which was unusual for a Sunday. By closing time, Layla was exhausted but hopeful. They'd made enough to cover the rent, just barely. See, Megan said as they counted the day's earnings. The universe provides. Layla nodded, but couldn't help wondering if her encounter with William had somehow changed her luck. It was a silly thought, of course, a coincidence, nothing more. Across town, in the penthouse of the Hartley building, Elias Hartley reviewed the quarterly reports on his tablet. At 30, he was one of the youngest CEOs in the city, known for his sharp mind and even sharper business tactics. He had his father's blue eyes, but none of his warmth. The elevator chimed, announcing a visitor. Elias didn't look up as the doors opened. You're late, father, he said, still scrolling through the reports. Dinner's getting cold. Some things are more important than punctuality, Elias, William replied, setting his bouquet on the side table. Something in his father's tone made Elias look up. William was smiling, really smiling, for the first time in what seemed like years. You seem different, Elias observed, setting down his tablet. Did something happen today? William settled into the armchair across from his son. I met someone at the market, a young woman. She helped me pick out flowers for your mother. Elias tensed. He hated talking about his mother. The pain of her loss was still too raw even after 3 years. That was nice of her. More than nice, William insisted. She sat with me for over an hour, just listening to an old man's stories. No agenda, no rush. She has the heart your mother always wanted you to find. Elias sighed. Here it came, another lecture, about how he needed to open up and find someone special, as if relationships were items to be checked off a business plan. Dad, please. Not tonight. Her name is Layla Carter, William continued, ignoring his son's discomfort. She owns a flower shop called Wildflower Blooms. Lovely girl, but I could tell she's struggling. The kind of person who helps others even when she needs help herself. Something clicked in Elias's mind. Wildflower Blooms? On Maple Street? I think. We've reviewed that property. The building owner wants to sell, but there's a commercial tenant holding out. William's expression hardened slightly. Tell me you're not planning to evict that girl, Elias. It's business, Dad. The area is prime for redevelopment. No, William said firmly. This is exactly what your mother warned about. You've become so focused on deals and profits that you can't see people anymore. Elias ran a hand through his dark hair, frustrated. I see people clearly, Dad. That's why I'm successful. I don't let emotions cloud my judgment. And look how happy it's made you, William said sadly. When was the last time you smiled? Really smiled? Elias had no answer for that. Instead, he changed the subject. How about we eat? Mrs. Jenkins made your favorite pot roast. William shook his head, but followed his son to the dining room. Throughout dinner, he continued to bring up Layla, her kindness, her struggle, how she reminded him of Lily. By the time dessert was served, Elias had heard enough. Fine, he said, putting down his spoon. If it will make you happy, I'll meet this paragon of virtue and thank her for helping you. Will that satisfy you? William smiled knowingly. It's a start. The next morning, Layla arrived at her shop early again. She was arranging flowers in the window display when a sleek, black car pulled up outside. Her heart sank when she recognized the Hartley Investments logo on the door. The building owner must have sold already, she thought. They're here to tell me I have to leave. The car door opened, and a tall man in an expensive suit stepped out. He was handsome in a stern way, with dark hair and familiar blue eyes. Layla instantly recognized those eyes. They were William's eyes, but without the kindness. The bell jingled as he entered the shop. Miss Carter? He asked, his voice deep and controlled. Yes, Layla replied, wiping her hands on her apron. What can I do for you? I'm Elias Hartley, he said, extending his hand. William Hartley's son. Layla hesitantly shook his hand. Is William all right? Something flickered across Elias's face. Surprise, perhaps, that her first concern was for his father, rather than why he was there. He's fine, Elias assured her. Better than fine, actually. He hasn't stopped talking about you since yesterday. Layla relaxed slightly. He's a sweet man. I enjoyed our conversation. Elias looked around the shop, taking in the modest displays and somewhat worn furniture. His expression was unreadable, but Layla felt like she was being assessed, evaluated like one of his business prospects. My father said you were kind to him, Elias said finally. That you helped him choose flowers for my mother and listen to his stories. I wanted to thank you personally. There's no need to thank me, Layla said, uncomfortable under his scrutiny. Anyone would have done the same. No, Elias said firmly. They wouldn't have. Most people are too busy with their own lives to stop for an old man on a bench. There was something accusatory in his tone that made Layla bristle. Maybe in your world, she replied. In mine, people still help each other without expecting anything in return. Elias raised an eyebrow. My world? The world where everything has a price tag, Layla clarified, gesturing to his expensive suit and the luxury car outside. Where businesses like mine are just numbers on a spreadsheet, not people's dreams and livelihoods. Understanding dawned on Elias's face. Ah, you know who I am. Everyone knows Hartley Investments, Layla said, unable to keep the bitterness from her voice. You're the people who decide which businesses live or die. Elias's expression hardened. We're the people who make difficult financial decisions, based on viability and potential, not sentiment. But that's not why I'm here today. Why are you here, Mr. Hartley? Layla asked directly. For a moment, Elias seemed at a loss for words, an unusual state for him. As I said, to thank you for helping my father. And he hesitated. He suggested I ask you to dinner. Layla blinked in surprise. Dinner? With you? Is that so shocking? Elias asked, a hint of defensiveness in his tone. Honestly? Yes, Layla admitted. We don't exactly seem like we'd have much in common. Elias studied her for a moment, then nodded. "You're probably right, but I promised my father I would ask, and I keep my promises." The bell jingled again as Megan entered the shop, stopping, short when she saw Elias. "Oh, sorry, am I interrupting?" "Not at all," Layla said quickly. "Mr. Hartley was just leaving." Elias reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card, placing it on the counter. "In case you change your mind." "Good day, Miss Carter." As the door closed behind him, Megan rushed to the window, watching him get back into his car. "Was that Elias Hartley?" she asked, wide-eyed. "What did he want?" Layla picked up the business card, turning it over in her hands. "Apparently, to ask me to dinner." "Dinner with Elias Hartley?" Megan's voice rose in disbelief. "The Elias Hartley, and you said no?" "Of course I said no," Layla replied, sliding the card into her pocket instead of throwing it away, which had been her first instinct. "Men like him don't ask women like me to dinner unless they want something." "Maybe he wants you," Megan suggested. With a grin, Layla rolled her eyes. "Don't be ridiculous, he's probably just humoring his father." But as she went back to arranging flowers, Layla couldn't help wondering what it would be like to have dinner with Elias Hartley, the man whose company had turned down her father's loan application, the man who represented everything she resented about the wealthy elite. And yet, those eyes, William's eyes, there had been something in them, something hidden beneath the cold exterior, something almost vulnerable. Layla shook her head, dismissing the thought. Men like Elias Hartley didn't have vulnerabilities, they had strategies. And whatever his strategy was, she wanted no part of it. Outside, Elias sat in his car, watching the flower shop through the tinted windows. For the first time in a long time, someone had said no to him, had looked past his wealth and name and seen... What? Something he didn't like, apparently. "Where to, sir?" his driver asked. Elias hesitated, then made a decision. "The office, and call Thomas in research. I want everything we have on wildflower blooms and Layla Carter on my desk by noon." As the car pulled away, Elias found himself thinking about the flash of fire he'd seen in Layla's eyes when she'd spoken of dreams and livelihoods. It had been a long time since anyone had challenged him like that. Perhaps his father was right about one thing. Layla Carter was indeed different, and despite himself, Elias was intrigued. Elias Hartley stared at the file on his desk, a frown deepening the lines on his forehead. The information on Layla Carter and her shop was exactly what he'd expected. A struggling small business with mounting debt, declining revenue, and little chance of survival in today's economy. On paper, it was the kind of business Hartley Investments would either restructure completely or recommend closing. But this wasn't just any business. This was the livelihood of the woman who had shown kindness to his father. "You wanted to see me, sir?" Thomas, his research director, stood in the doorway. "Yes," Elias said, closing the file. "What's the status on the Maple Street development?" "Moving forward as planned," Thomas replied. "We've secured agreements from all tenants except for the flower shop. The owner of the building is getting impatient." Elias tapped his fingers on the desk. "Put it on hold." "Sir?" Thomas looked confused. "But the investors—" "Will wait," Elias said firmly. "I want to explore some alternative approaches." After Thomas left, Elias opened his desk drawer and took out his mother's photograph. Lily Hartley's warm smile looked back at him, her eyes, his father's eyes, full of the compassion that had defined her life. "What would you do, Mom?" he whispered. He already knew the answer. His mother would help without hesitation, but she would do it in a way that preserved dignity, not as a business transaction. Elias picked up his phone and dialed. "Dad, how would you feel about visiting that flower shop again?" Layla was cutting stems for a centerpiece when the bell over the door jingled. She looked up to see William Hartley walking in, his face lighting up when he spotted her. "Mr. Hartley," she said, genuinely pleased. "What a nice surprise." "Please call me William," he insisted. "I was hoping you might help me with another arrangement. My housekeeper's birthday is tomorrow." "Of course," Layla said, wiping her hands on her apron. "What does she like?" As they discussed flower options, the bell jingled again. Layla glanced up and froze. Elias Hartley stood in the doorway, as imposing in his tailored suit as he had been 2 days earlier. "I hope you don't mind," William said, noticing her expression. "I asked Elias to drive me. My hands aren't as steady on the wheel as they used." "To be?" Elias nodded stiffly. "Ms. Carter." "Mr. Hartley," Layla replied, equally formal. William looked between them and sighed. "Elias, why don't you help Layla while I sit down? These old legs need a rest." Before either could object, William had settled himself in the small chair by the window, leaving Layla and Elias standing awkwardly by the counter. "I don't actually need help," Layla said quietly. "I don't actually know anything about flowers," Elias admitted. A smile tugged at the corner of Layla's mouth despite herself. "Then why did you agree to this obvious setup?" Elias glanced at his father, who was pretending to be very interested in a gardening magazine. "Because it's easier than arguing with him. He's surprisingly stubborn for a man his age." "I heard that," William called from his chair, not looking up from his magazine. This time, Layla did smile. "Well, since you're here, you might as well make yourself useful. Hold these." She handed Elias a bundle of daisies, which he took awkwardly, clearly out of his element. As Layla worked, selecting flowers and arranging them with practiced ease, she found herself stealing glances at Elias. Without his businessman persona, concentrating on not dropping the flowers, he looked almost human. "So," she said, breaking the silence, "do you always do what your father tells you?" Elias raised an eyebrow. "Only when it's easier than the alternative. Do you always help strangers crying on benches?" "Only when they need it," Layla replied. "Not everyone has someone to turn to." Something flickered in Elias's eyes. Recognition, perhaps. "You sound like you know that feeling well." Layla focused on the arrangement, avoiding his gaze. "My dad died 5 years ago. My mum a few years before that. I know what it's like to be alone." She hadn't meant to share something so personal, and judging by Elias's surprised expression, he hadn't expected it either. "I'm sorry," he said, and for once his voice lacked its usual cool detachment. "About your parents?" Layla shrugged, uncomfortable with his sympathy. "It's life, we all lose people." "Yes," Elias said quietly, "we do." The simple acknowledgement of shared grief hung between them, creating a momentary connection that neither had anticipated. The moment was broken by William, who had apparently finished his magazine. "How's that arrangement coming along?" "Just finished," Layla said, adding the final touch. "What do you think?" The bouquet was beautiful, bright and cheerful but not ostentatious. William beamed with approval. "It's perfect. Mrs. Jenkins will love it." He reached for his wallet. "How much do I owe you?" $40, Layla said. William handed her a $100 bill. "Keep the change." "That's too much," Layla protested. "Nonsense," William insisted. "You've brightened an old man's week. That's worth far more than $60. Layla wanted to argue further, but something in William's expression told her it would hurt his pride if she refused. "Thank you," she said instead. As William headed for the door, he turned to his son. "Elias, I just remembered I need to stop by the pharmacy. Why don't you take Layla to lunch while I run my errand? My treat, of course." Elias and Layla exchanged looks of mutual exasperation. "Dad, I'm sure Miss Carter is busy." "I really should. Stay at the shop." "Nonsense," William waved away their objections. "Megan can watch the shop for an hour, can't she? And Elias, you always work through lunch anyway. It would do you both good to take a break." Before either could protest further, William was out the door, moving surprisingly quickly for a man who had claimed his legs needed rest just minutes earlier. "He's not subtle, is he?" Layla said, watching him go. "Subtlety was never his strong suit," Elias agreed. "I apologize for his enthusiasm." Layla hesitated. On one hand, the last thing she wanted was to spend more time with Elias Hartley. So on the other hand, she genuinely liked William, and the old man seemed determined to push them together. "There's a cafe next door," she said finally. "They make decent sandwiches." Elias looked surprised by her acceptance. "Are you sure? You seemed quite determined to avoid me the other day." "I'm doing this for William," Layla clarified. "He reminds me of my dad." Something like disappointment crossed Elias's face, but he nodded. "For William, then." The cafe was small and cozy, with mismatched furniture and local artwork on the walls. It was the kind of place Elias would never have chosen himself, preferring the upscale restaurants where he conducted business lunches. They sat at a corner table, both stiff and uncomfortable. After ordering a turkey sandwich for Layla, a club sandwich for Elias, they fell into awkward silence. "So," Elias said finally, "how long have you owned the flower shop?" 3 years, Layla replied. "It was always my dream, ever since. I was little. My mom loved flowers. And is it everything you hoped for?" Elias asked carefully. Layla looked at him suspiciously. "You mean, am I happy even though I'm struggling financially?" "Yes, I am. Some things are more important than money, Mr. Hartley." "Elias," he corrected, "and I wasn't implying anything. I genuinely wanted to know if owning your own business has been fulfilling." Layla softened slightly. "It has its challenges, but when someone comes in sad and leaves smiling because of something I created, yes, it's worth it." Their food arrived, providing a welcome distraction. As they ate, Elias found himself watching Layla, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear, the small smile that appeared when she tasted something she liked. She was different from the polished, ambitious women he usually encountered, women who viewed him as a prize to be won or a stepping stone to a luxurious lifestyle. "Why did you say no?" he asked suddenly. Layla looked up from her sandwich. "To what?" "To dinner, the other day." She set down her sandwich and met his gaze directly. "Because men like you don't ask women like me to dinner without an agenda. And I'm not interested in being anyone's charity case or business transaction." "Men like me," Elias repeated, his voice hardening slightly. "You've made a lot of assumptions about me, Miss Carter." "Layla," she corrected, mimicking his earlier tone. "And are they assumptions? Your company has a reputation, you know. Buy out, shut down, redevelop. Not much room for the little people in that equation." Elias leaned back in his chair. "Business is business. Sentimentality doesn't pay the bills." "No," Layla agreed, "but it makes life worth living. Something your father seems to understand better than you do." The jab stung more than Elias wanted to admit. "My father and I have different perspectives. He built the company, but times have changed." "And some things never change," Layla countered, "like the value of kindness or the importance of seeing people as more than numbers on a spreadsheet." Elias studied her for a moment. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Someone softer, more easily impressed." Layla laughed, a genuine sound that surprised them both. "Because I helped your father? Kindness isn't weakness, Elias. Sometimes it takes more strength to care than to walk away." Something in her words resonated with Elias, touching a part of himself he'd buried long ago, the part that had cried when his mother died, the part his father had been too lost in his own grief to comfort. "My mother used to say something similar," he admitted, "that the strongest people are the ones who remain kind, even when the world gives them reasons not to be." Layla's expression softened. "She sounds wise." "She was," Elias said quietly. "My father isn't the only one who misses her." The confession hung between them, unexpected and real. For a brief moment, the barriers between them, wealth, status, perspective, seemed less insurmountable. The moment was broken by Layla's phone ringing. She checked it and frowned. "I need to get back to the shop. One of our regular customers has an emergency order." As they walked back, Elias found himself reluctant for their time together to end. "Would you consider having dinner with me? Not because my father suggested it, but because I'd like to continue our conversation." Layla paused outside her shop. "Why? We clearly have different values and priorities." "Maybe that's exactly why," Elias suggested. "Maybe we could learn something from each other." Layla hesitated, then shook her head. "I don't think so. Thank you for lunch, Elias." She entered the shop, leaving Elias standing on the sidewalk feeling rejected for the second time, an unusual and uncomfortable experience for a man accustomed to getting what he wanted. Inside, Megan was waiting with wide eyes. Was that another lunch date with Elias Hartley? What's going on? "Nothing," Layla insisted. "His father is playing matchmaker, that's all." "And?" Megan pressed. "Is it working?" Layla busied herself with a flower arrangement. Of course not. We're too different. He probably sees me as some kind of charity project. Or maybe he actually likes you, Megan suggested. Not everyone has an ulterior motive, you know. Men like Elias Hartley always have an agenda, Layla said firmly, and I'm not going to be part of it. But as she worked through the afternoon, Layla found herself thinking about the brief moment when Elias had mentioned his mother, the flash of genuine emotion she'd seen in his eyes. Maybe there was more to him than she'd assumed. Maybe the next morning, Layla arrived at her shop to find a courier waiting outside with a small package. "Layla Carter?" the courier asked. "That's me," she confirmed, unlocking the door. "Delivery for you," he said, handing her the package and a clipboard to sign. Inside the shop, Layla opened the package curiously. It contained a small, leather-bound book, The Language of Flowers, a beautiful illustrated dictionary of flower meanings. A note was tucked inside. "Thought this might interest you. It was my mother's favorite. E.H." Layla ran her fingers over the embossed cover, surprised by the thoughtfulness of the gift. It wasn't extravagant or showy. It was personal, meaningful. Before she could dwell on it further, her phone rang. It was her landlord. "Miss Carter, I wanted to let you know that there's been a change regarding your rent situation." Layla's heart sank. Here it came. The eviction notice she'd been dreading. "What kind of change?" she asked, bracing herself. A rent has been paid for the next 3 months, the landlord said. "Someone called yesterday and arranged it all." Layla froze. "What? Who?" "They asked to remain anonymous," the landlord replied. "Some kind of benefactor, I guess. You must have friends in high places." After hanging up, Layla sat down heavily, her mind racing. An anonymous benefactor. The timing couldn't be coincidental. First Elias shows up at her shop. Then this happens? She grabbed her phone and dialed the number on the business card he'd given her. It went to voicemail. "This is Layla Carter," she said, her voice tight with anger. "We need to talk. Now." In his office, Elias was reviewing the quarterly projections when his assistant buzzed him. "Mr. Hartley, there's a Ms. Carter here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she seems upset." Elias straightened his tie. "Send her in." The door opened, and Layla stormed in, clutching the book he'd sent her. Her eyes were blazing with anger. "Did you pay my rent?" she demanded without preamble. Elias maintained his calm exterior, though he was surprised by her reaction. "I may have spoken to your landlord, yes." "Why would you do that?" Layla asked, her voice rising. "I never asked for your help. I don't want your money." "It wasn't charity," Elias said, standing up. "It was a business decision. We're considering investing in small businesses in that area, and—" "Stop," Layla interrupted. "Just stop. Don't insult my intelligence by pretending this was business. This was you thinking you could buy my— What? My gratitude? My affection? My compliance with whatever plans you have for my building?" Elias frowned. "That's not what this was about." "Then, what was it about?" Layla challenged. "Because from where I'm standing it looks like you're trying to solve a problem. Me with money. That's what you do, isn't it? Throw money at things until they go your way." "I was trying to help," Elias said, his own anger rising. "Is that so hard to believe?" "Yes," Layla exclaimed. "Because people like you don't help people like me without expecting something in return. So what is it you want, Elias? What's your price?" The accusation stung more than it should have. "Not everyone has an ulterior motive, Layla. Says the man who runs a company built on calculating risk and return," she shot back. "I don't need your help and I don't want it. So stay out of my business and my life." She slammed the book down on his desk. "And I'm returning this. I don't accept gifts from people who think I'm for sale." As she turned to leave, Elias called after her, "That's not fair." "You're not giving me a chance to explain." Layla paused at the door. "Explain what? That you thought throwing money at me would make me fall at your feet in gratitude. Save it for someone who's impressed by your bank account, Mr. Hartley." Shata. Door closed behind her with a definitive click, leaving Elias standing alone in his office, the rejected book on his desk. He picked it up, running his fingers over the cover just as Layla had done earlier. His assistant's voice came over the intercom. "Sir, your 11 o'clock is here." "Cancel it," Elias said. "Cancel everything for today." He sat back down, still holding the book. For the first time in years, someone had seen through his carefully constructed facade, had challenged him directly. And instead of being annoyed, he found himself intrigued. Layla Carter was unlike anyone he'd ever met, fierce, principled, and completely unimpressed by his wealth and status, and he had no idea what to do about it. William Hartley was enjoying his morning coffee when his son walked into the kitchen, looking tired and distracted. "You look terrible," William observed. "Trouble sleeping?" Elias poured himself a cup of coffee. "I made a mistake." William raised an eyebrow. "The great Elias Hartley admits to a mistake? This I have to hear." "I tried to help Layla, Ms. Carter," Elias explained. "I paid her rent. Anonymously, or so I thought." William winced. "Let me guess, she found out and didn't take it well." "That's putting it mildly," Elias said, rubbing his temples. "She stormed into my office, accused me of trying to buy her, and told me to stay out of her life." William shook his head. "Didn't your mother and I teach you anything? People have pride, son, especially people who've worked hard for everything they have." "I was trying to help," Elias insisted. "No," William said gently. "You were trying to fix a problem the way you always do, from a distance, with money, without getting your hands dirty. Real help means getting involved, being present." Elias sipped his coffee in silence, considering his father's words. "So what are you going to do about it?" William asked finally. "Nothing," Elias replied. "She made it clear she wants nothing to do with me." William snorted. "Since when do you give up so easily? The Elias I know sees obstacles as challenges to overcome." "This isn't a business deal, Dad," Elias said, irritated. "No," William agreed. "It's much more important than that. It's about connecting with another human being, something you haven't done in a long time." The truth of his father's words hit home. Since his mother's death, Elias had retreated into his work, avoiding emotional connections that might lead to pain. "What would Mom have done?" he asked quietly. William smiled sadly. "She would have found a way to help that preserve dignity. She would have seen the person, not just the problem." Elias nodded slowly. "I need to make this right." "Yes," William agreed. "You do, and not with your checkbook this time." As Elias left for work, a plan began to form in his mind. He would have to approach this differently, not as Elias Hartley, CEO of Hartley Investments, but as the man his mother had raised him to be, the man who had been lost in grief and ambition for too long. He picked up his phone. "Thomas, I need you to set up a meeting with the Maple Street development team and find out everything you can about the flower business, not the financials, but the actual work. What suppliers do small shops use? What challenges they face? Everything." "May I ask why, sir?" Thomas sounded confused. "Because," Elias said, a new determination in his voice, "I need to understand something important." For the first time in years, Elias felt something stirring inside him. Not the satisfaction of a successful business deal, but the challenge of winning over someone who saw him for who he really was and wasn't impressed. It was terrifying and exhilarating. Layla wiped down the counter of her shop, trying to focus on the task at hand rather than the anger still simmering inside her. 3 days had passed since her confrontation with Elias in his office, and she'd heard nothing from him since. Good riddance, she told herself. The last thing she needed was a wealthy businessman thinking he could buy her gratitude. The bell over the door jingled, and Layla looked up to see William Hartley entering, his familiar warm smile in place. "William," she said, genuinely happy to see him despite her feelings about his son. "What a nice surprise." "Hello, my dear," William replied. "I hope I'm not interrupting." "Not at all," Layla assured him. "Just catching up on some cleaning. What can I help you with today?" William glanced around the shop. "Actually, I came to talk to you about Elias." Layla's smile faded. "There's nothing to talk about." "I think there is," William said gently. "He told me what happened. He made a mistake, Layla." "A mistake?" Layla echoed. "Is that what he calls it? Trying to solve me like I'm one of his business problems?" William sighed and settled. onto the stool by the counter. My son has forgotten how to connect with people. After his mother died, he retreated into his work. It was safer that way. Numbers don't break your heart. The simple explanation caught Layla off guard. She'd been so ready to believe the worst about Elias that she hadn't considered he might be acting out of his own pain. That doesn't excuse what he did, she said, but her voice had lost some of its edge. No, it doesn't, William agreed, but it might help explain it. Elias doesn't know how to help without taking control. It's what he does all day at work, identifies problems and eliminates them. Layla frowned. I'm not a problem to be eliminated. Of course not, William said quickly, and he knows that now. Believe it or not, you've made quite an impression on him. Me? Layla couldn't hide her surprise. William nodded. You stood up to him? Most people don't. They're too intimidated by his position, his wealth. But you saw through all that, right to the heart of him. And what you saw disappointed you. Layla didn't know how to respond. She'd been so convinced that Elias was just another rich man using his money to control others. But William's words painted a different picture, of a man who had lost his way, who had forgotten how to connect. I'm not asking you to forgive him right away, William continued. Just don't write him off completely. There's more to my son than his bank account. Before Layla could respond, the bell jingled again. This time it was Megan arriving for her shift. Mr. Hartley, Megan exclaimed. Good to see you again. William stood, his knees creaking slightly. And you as well, young lady. I was just leaving. He turned to Layla. Think about what I said, my dear. Second chances are rare in this life. Sometimes they're worth taking. As William left, Megan raised an eyebrow at Layla. What was that about? Layla shook her head. Nothing. Just family stuff. His family or yours? Megan asked shrewdly. Neither, Layla replied, though she couldn't help wondering why William's words had affected her so deeply. Across town, Elias sat in a small, cluttered office, feeling distinctly out of place in his tailored suit. So, Mr. Hartley, said Rosa, Martinez, the owner of Blooms and Buds, a flower wholesaler. Your assistant said you wanted to learn about the flower business. May I ask why? Elias shifted in his chair. I'm considering a new investment opportunity. I want to understand the industry better. Rosa, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s, gave him a skeptical look. And you came to me instead of one of the big corporate suppliers because I want to understand how small businesses operate in this sector, Elias replied honestly. The challenges they face, the realities of day-to-day operations. Rosa studied him for a moment, then nodded. All right, let me show you around, but you might want to lose the jacket. It gets hot in the warehouse. For the next 2 hours, Elias followed Rosa through her operation, listening and learning. He heard about rising costs, the difficulty of competing with big box stores, the delicate balance of ordering enough stock without wasting product. He learned about the early morning flower markets, the seasonal challenges, and the small joys of creating something beautiful in a hard world. By the time he left, his expensive shoes were damp from the warehouse floor, his hands were scratched from thorns, and his mind was racing with new understanding. Thank you for your time, he said to Rosa as they shook hands. You've been incredibly helpful. Just one question, Rosa said, fixing him with a direct gaze. This wouldn't have anything to do with wildflower blooms, would it? Layla Carter's shop? Elias tried to hide his surprise. Why would you ask that? Rosa smiled knowingly. Small industry, Mr. Hartley. We talk. And Layla mentioned a businessman had been sniffing around. She was worried about a takeover. It's not like that, Elias said quickly. I'm not trying to take over her business. Then what are you trying to do? Rosa challenged. Elias hesitated, then decided on honesty. I'm trying to understand her world so I can connect with her. As a person, not a business opportunity. Rosa's expression softened. Well, why didn't you say so? If you'd told me you were sweet on Layla, I would have been more helpful. I'm not, Elias began, then stopped. What was the point in denying it? Is there anything else I should know to help her, I mean? Rosa thought for a moment. Layla needs new refrigeration units. The ones she has are old and cost too much. To run. And she's too proud to apply for another loan after being turned down twice. Elias nodded. Thank you, Rosa. You've given me a lot to think about. As he drove back to his office, Elias knew what he needed to do. Not a grand gesture with his checkbook, but something more personal, more meaningful. Something that showed he understood her world and respected her place in it. The following Sunday morning, Layla arrived at the farmer's market early, hoping to secure the best blooms for the week ahead. As she made her way through the stalls, a familiar figure caught her eye. Elias Hartley, dressed in jeans and a simple button-down shirt instead of his usual suit, was examining flowers at her regular vendor's stall. He looked different, more approachable, less like the intimidating CEO who had made her so angry. Layla considered walking away before he noticed her, but curiosity got the better of her. What was he doing here? Mr. Hartley, she said as she approached. Elias turned, surprise and something like relief crossing his face. Layla, good morning. What are you doing here? She asked directly. Learning, he replied simply. About flowers, about your world. Layla raised an eyebrow. And why would you do that? Because I made a mistake, Elias admitted. I tried to help you in the wrong way. I thought money could solve the problem, but I didn't understand that it wasn't about the money at all. His honesty caught her off guard. She had expected excuses or justifications, not this straightforward acknowledgement. No, it wasn't, she agreed. So I've been educating myself, Elias continued. I spent time with Rosa at the wholesaler. I've been reading about small business challenges. I'm trying to understand why, Layla asked, genuinely curious. Why go to all that trouble? Elias met her gaze directly. Because you were right about me. I've been seeing people as problems to solve or assets to acquire for so long that I forgot how to just connect. And I'd like to try again, if you'll let me. The vulnerability in his admission was unexpected and disarming. This wasn't the arrogant businessman who had tried to fix her problems with money. This was someone humbled, someone trying to change. Before Layla could respond, the flower vendor called out to Elias. Hey, Mr. Hartley, I found those peonies you were asking about, last ones of the season. Thank you, Elias called back. He turned to Layla. Would you help me choose? I'm still new at this. It was such a simple request, so reminiscent of how she'd first met William, that Layla found herself nodding despite her reservations. As they walked through the market together, selecting flowers, Layla was struck by how attentively Elias listened to her explanations, how he asked thoughtful questions about her business and her passion for flowers. My mother loved gardening, he said, as they examined some particularly vibrant roses. She used to say that flowers teach us patience and humility, that we can't rush them or control them. We can only create the right conditions and then trust the process. She sounds wise, Layla said. She was, Elias agreed, and I've forgotten too many of her lessons. Until recently. Their eyes met, and for a moment, Layla saw beyond the wealthy businessman to the man beneath, a man who had lost his way but was trying to find it again. Would you have coffee with me? Elias asked suddenly. Not a date, just a conversation, a chance to start over. Layla hesitated, then made a decision. Coffee, just coffee. They found a small cafe at the edge of the market, settled at an outdoor table and talked, really talked, about their parents, their dreams, their fears. Elias spoke about the pressure of taking over the family business, the weight of responsibility, and the loneliness of success. Layla shared her struggles to keep her shop afloat, her determination to honor her parents' memory by making it her own. I still don't agree with how you tried to help me, Layla said as they finished their coffee. I know, Elias acknowledged, and I won't do it again. But I would like to help if you'll let me. Not with money, but with whatever you need. Layla studied him, trying to gauge his sincerity. Why? Why do you care what happens to my little shop? Elias took a deep breath. Because when I'm with you, I remember who I used to be. Before spreadsheets and profit margins became my whole world, and I'd like to get to know that person again. The simple honesty of his words touched something in Layla that she'd been protecting for a long time. The part of her that wanted to trust, to connect, to believe in people again. I'll think about it, she said finally. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. And for now, that was enough. The next week brought unexpected changes to Wildflower Blooms. First, Rosa called to offer Layla a special discount on premium blooms. Then a local magazine contacted her about featuring her shop in their Hidden Gems section. Most surprisingly, 3 corporate clients called to inquire about regular flower deliveries for their offices. "Something strange is happening," Layla said to Megan as they prepared the 3rd corporate order of the week. "We've never been this busy." Megan grinned. "Maybe your luck is changing." "Or maybe someone is pulling strings," Layla said suspiciously. "Would that be so terrible?" Megan asked. "If Elias is helping by sending business your way instead of just writing a check, isn't that different?" Layla considered this. It was different. Instead of trying to solve her problems directly, he was creating opportunities, opening doors without pushing her through them. That evening, as Layla was closing up shop, her phone rang. It was Elias. "I hope I'm not bothering you," he said, when she answered. "No, I'm just finishing up for the day," Layla replied. "What can I do for you?" "Actually, I was wondering if you'd have dinner with me tomorrow night. A proper dinner this time, not a setup by my father." Layla hesitated. Part of her wanted to say yes immediately, but another part remained cautious. "Did you have anything to do with the sudden increase in business at my shop?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "I may have mentioned to a few colleagues that I knew a talented florist, but I didn't pressure anyone and I didn't offer incentives, I just made introductions." It was exactly what she'd suspected, but his honesty was refreshing. He wasn't trying to hide his involvement or take credit. "So, dinner?" Elias prompted when she didn't respond. "Yes," Layla said. "Finally." Dinner would be nice. William was reading in his study when Elias returned home that evening. He looked up from his book, noting the smile on his son's face. "Good day?" he asked casually. "Yes," Elias replied, loosening his tie. "Layla agreed to have dinner with me tomorrow." William closed his book, unable to hide his pleasure. "That's wonderful news. What changed her mind?" "I took your advice," Elias said, settling into the chair across from his father. "Instead of trying to fix her problems, I tried to understand them. I spent time learning about her business, her challenges, and then I found ways to help that respected her independence." "Your mother would be proud," William said softly. "She always said you had her heart, even if you tried to hide it." Elias was quiet for a moment, remembering. "I miss her, Dad, every day." "So do I, son," William replied. "So do I." They sat in companionable silence, both thinking of Lily Hartley and the legacy of love she had left behind, a legacy that was perhaps finally bearing fruit in her son's life. The restaurant Elias had chosen was elegant, but not ostentatious, a small Italian place with warm lighting and quiet corners. When Layla arrived, wearing a simple blue dress that she'd agonized over for hours, she found Elias already waiting at a table near the window. He stood as she approached, his eyes taking in her appearance with obvious appreciation. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "Thank you," Layla replied, suddenly shy. "This is a lovely place." As they settled into their seats, Layla was struck by how different this felt from their previous encounters. There was an ease between them now, a tentative trust building. "I have something for you," Elias said after they had ordered. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small envelope. "It's not a check," he added quickly, seeing her expression, "and it's not charity." Layla took the envelope cautiously and opened it. Inside was a business card for a refrigeration specialist and a note that read, "This is John. He specializes in energy-efficient cooling systems for small businesses. He's expecting your call if you're interested. No strings attached." "Rosa mentioned your refrigeration units were costing you too much to run," Elias explained. "John is the best in the business. He'll give you a fair quote and honest work. Whether you call him or not is entirely up to you." Layla stared at the card, touched by the thoughtfulness of the gesture. He hadn't tried to solve the problem for her. He had simply provided a resource, leaving the decision in her hands. "Thank you," she said sincerely. "This is perfect." Elias smiled, clearly relieved. "I'm learning." The dinner that followed was unlike any date Layla had experienced. They talked about books they loved, places they wanted to visit, memories of their childhoods. Elias spoke about the pressure he'd felt taking over the family business after his mother died, how he'd thrown himself into work to avoid dealing with his grief. "My father retreated into himself," he explained, "and I retreated into the company. We both found ways to hide from the pain." "And now?" Layla asked. "Now," Elias said, his eyes meeting hers, "I'm trying to find my way back, to remember what matters beyond balance sheets and acquisitions." As the evening drew to a close, Elias walked Layla to her car. The night air was cool and she shivered slightly. Without a word, Elias removed his jacket and placed it around her shoulders. "I had a wonderful time," Layla said, turning to face him. "Thank you." "So did I," Elias replied. He hesitated, then added, "I'd like to see you again, soon." Layla nodded. "I'd like that too." For a moment they stood there, the air between them charged with possibility. Then gently, Elias leaned forward and kissed her, a soft, questioning kiss that asked rather than demanded. When they parted, Layla felt something shift inside her, a wall beginning to crumble, a heart starting to hope again. "Good night." "Layla," Elias said softly. "Good night, Elias," she replied, getting into her car. As she drove home, Layla touched her lips, still feeling the warmth of his kiss. She had been so determined to keep him at a distance, to protect herself from what she had assumed he represented. But the man she'd had dinner with tonight wasn't the cold businessman she'd first met. He was thoughtful, vulnerable, trying to change, and despite all her reservations, she was falling for him. The following weeks brought a deepening connection between Layla and Elias. They saw each other regularly, for dinners, walks in the park, quiet evenings at her apartment, where Elias helped her design new arrangements for corporate clients. He never pushed, never tried to take control, content to follow her lead and learn about her world. William watched with quiet satisfaction as his son transformed, smiling more, working less, rediscovering parts of himself that had been buried since Lily's death. "You seem happy," he commented one evening as they shared a drink in the study. "I am," Elias admitted, "for the first time in a long time." "And Layla?" William asked. "Is she happy too?" "I think so," Elias said. "I hope so." What neither of them knew was that across town, Layla was facing a new crisis. The owner of her building had received another offer, a substantial one, from a development company called Phoenix Holdings. They wanted to convert the entire block into luxury condominiums, and they were pressuring all the small business owners to sell. "They're offering 3 months' rent as compensation," Layla told Megan, her hands shaking as she read the letter. 3 months! As if that's enough time to find a new location and move an entire business. "Can't you fight it?" Megan asked. "How?" Layla said, despair creeping into her voice. "I'm month to month. I have no legal recourse. And this company, they're huge. They have lawyers, resources." She stared at the letter, at the Phoenix Holdings letterhead with its stylized bird logo. Something about it seemed familiar, but she couldn't place it. "Have you told Elias?" Megan asked gently. Layla shook her head. "Not yet. I don't want him to think I'm asking for his help." "But he might know something about this company," Megan pointed out. "He's in real estate development too." "That's exactly why I don't want to tell him," Layla admitted. "What if there's a conflict of interest? What if his company is somehow involved? I'm finally starting to trust him, to believe in what we're building. I don't want business to come between us." But as she placed the letter in her desk drawer, a nagging doubt took root in her mind. Phoenix Holdings. Why did that name sound so familiar? That night, unable to sleep, Layla did what she'd been avoiding. She Googled Phoenix Holdings. What she found made her blood run cold. Phoenix Holdings was a subsidiary of Hartley Investments, Elias's company. The betrayal hit her like a physical blow. All this time, while he'd been gaining her trust, getting close to her, his company had been planning to force her out of her shop, the shop that was her life, her parents' legacy. Had it all been a lie? The thoughtful gestures, the genuine conversations, the kiss that had made her believe in second chances. With trembling hands, Layla reached for her phone and dialed Elias's number. It went to voicemail. "I know about Phoenix Holdings," she said, her voice breaking. "I know it's your company. Was this your plan all along? To distract me while you set up the purchase of my building? Don't call me back, we're done. She hung up, tears streaming down her face. She had been so foolish, so naive. She had let herself believe that Elias Hartley had changed, that he had seen her as more than just a business problem to solve. But, in the end, it seemed that business was all that mattered to him after all. Elias stared at his phone in disbelief, listening to Layla's message for the third time. Phoenix Holdings? His company trying to buy her building? None of it made sense. He immediately tried calling her back, but the call went straight to voicemail. Layla, I don't know what you're talking about. Phoenix Holdings is a subsidiary of Hartley Investments, yes, but I had no idea they were involved with your building. Please, let me explain in person. After leaving the message, Elias hurried to his computer and began searching through the company's recent acquisition files. It took him less than 10 minutes to find what he was looking for, a proposal for the purchase and redevelopment of a block on Maple Street, including the building that housed Wildflower Blooms. The project had been initiated 6 months ago, long before he'd met Layla, but the final approval had come through just last week, and the executive who had signed off on it, Thomas, his director of acquisitions, using Elias's pre-approved authority, while Elias had been focused on other projects and on building his relationship with Layla. Damn it, Elias muttered, reaching for his phone again. This time he called Thomas. Sir? Thomas answered, sounding surprised to receive a call from his boss so late in the evening. The Maple Street project, under Phoenix Holdings, Elias said, without preamble. Tell me everything. Thomas cleared his throat. It's proceeding as planned. We've made offers to all the current tenants, and most have already agreed to vacate. There are just 2 holdouts, a bookstore and a flower shop. And who authorized the final approval? Elias asked, though he already knew the answer. You did, sir, Thomas replied, confused. Through the standing authorization protocol, it was within the parameters you established for projects under 5 million. Elias closed his eyes, understanding now. He had set up a system that allowed certain executives to move forward with pre-vetted projects without his direct involvement, a necessary delegation given the size of his company. But in this case, that system had created a catastrophic misunderstanding. Cancel it, Elias said firmly. Immediately, send formal withdrawal notices to all tenants who received offers. Sir? Thomas sounded shocked. But we've already invested considerable resources in planning and initial payments. The projected return on investment, I don't care, Elias interrupted. Cancel it, and then I want a full review of all active Phoenix Holdings projects. Effective immediately, nothing moves forward without my personal approval. After ending the call, Elias tried Layla again. Still no answer. He grabbed his keys and headed for the door. This wasn't a conversation that could wait until morning. Layla sat in her darkened shop, surrounded by flowers that now seemed to mock her with their beauty and fragility. Just like her feelings for Elias, beautiful, but ultimately unable to survive in the harsh reality of business. She had turned off her phone after leaving her message, unable to bear the thought of hearing his voice, of listening to whatever explanation or excuse he might offer. The sound of knocking startled her. Looking up, she saw Elias standing outside the shop door, his face illuminated by the streetlight. For a moment she considered ignoring him, but the intensity of his expression made that impossible. Reluctantly, she moved to the door and unlocked. We're closed, she said coldly as he entered. Layla, please, Elias said, his voice urgent. I didn't know about Phoenix Holdings' offer on your building. I had no idea they were targeting this location. How could you not know, Layla demanded, anger and hurt making her voice shake. It's your company. It's a large company, Elias explained. With multiple subsidiaries and thousands of projects, I delegate many decisions, including acquisitions under a certain dollar amount. How convenient, Layla said bitterly. I'm not making excuses, Elias insisted. I should have been more involved, more aware. But I swear to you, I didn't know. About this specific project, as soon as I got your message, I looked into it and cancelled the whole thing. This caught Layla by surprise. You cancelled it? Of course I did, Elias said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. I would never knowingly do anything to hurt you or your business. Layla wanted to believe him, The sincerity in his eyes, the urgency in his voice, it all seemed genuine. But she had been hurt before, had trusted before, only to be disappointed. Even if that's true, she said carefully, it doesn't change the fact that this is who you are, what your company does. You buy properties, force out small businesses, and redevelop for maximum profit. That's your world, Elias. It was, Elias acknowledged. But people can change, companies can change, priorities can change. He stepped closer to her. I've been changing since I met you, Layla. You've reminded me that there are more important things than profit margins and quarterly returns. Pretty words, Layla said, though her resolve was weakening. But how do I know I can trust them, trust you? Elias reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded document. Maybe this will help. Layla took the paper hesitantly and unfolded. It was a lease agreement for her shop's building. But instead of Phoenix Holdings, the landlord listed was Lily's Garden, LLC. What is this? She asked, confused. A new company I've just established, Elias explained, named after my mother. I'm buying the building, but not for redevelopment. I want to preserve it, to create a space where small businesses like yours can thrive without the constant threat of eviction or skyrocketing rents. Layla stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. You're buying my building to protect me. Not just you, Elias clarified. All the businesses there, the bookstore, the cafe, the vintage clothing shop, they all deserve a chance to succeed on their own terms, not to be pushed out because some developer sees a better return on investment in luxury condos. The gesture was so unexpected, so contrary to everything she had assumed about him, that Layla didn't know how to respond. I don't want you to do this for me, she said finally. I'm not, Elias replied. I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do, because my mother would have wanted me to use our resources to protect people's dreams, not destroy them. You helped me see that, Layla, but this decision is mine. He reached for her hand, and this time, she didn't pull away. I'm not asking you to trust me completely right away. Trust has to be earned, and I'm willing to work for it. All I'm asking is for a chance to prove that what we've been building these past weeks is real. Layla looked down at their joined hands, then back up at his face, so different now from the cold, distant man she'd first met in this very shop. She thought about William, about the love he still held for his late wife, about the second chance, at connection he'd found in their Sunday morning conversations. One condition, she said. Anything, Elias replied immediately. The lease has to be fair market value, no discounts, no special treatment. I pay what the space is worth, just like any other tenant. A smile spread across Elias's face, a real smile that reached his eyes. Agreed, and you'll have final approval on any changes to the building or common areas. Layla felt the last of her resistance melting away, not because of his grand gesture, but because of the respect behind it. The understanding that what she wanted most wasn't financial security, but dignity and independence. I'm still mad at you, she warned, but there was no heat in her words. I know, Elias said, pulling her gently into his arms. You have every right to be, but I'm hoping you'll let me make it up to you. As his lips met hers, Layla felt the hurt and anger of the past few hours receding. This wasn't the end of their story. It was a new beginning, built on a foundation of truth and understanding rather than assumptions and mistrust. 2 months later, Wildflower Blooms was transformed. The new refrigeration units recommended by Elias's contact had reduced Layla's utility bills by almost 40%. The corporate clients continued to order regular arrangements, and the feature in the local magazine had brought in a steady stream of new customers. Most importantly, the anxiety that had been her constant companion, the fear of eviction, of losing everything she had worked for, was gone. The new lease from Lily's Garden, LLC, gave her security without sacrificing her independence. The place looks wonderful, William said, admiring the fresh paint and new display cases as he entered the shop for his weekly visit. At 78, he still had the same twinkle in his eye, but he moved more easily these days, buoyed by the joy of seeing his son happy again. Thank you, Layla said, giving him a warm hug. The security of knowing I'll be here for at least 5 years makes it worth investing in improvements. And how are things with my son? William asked, settling into what had become his chair by the window. Layla smiled. Good, really good. He's different now, more present, more willing to listen. We still disagree sometimes, but we talk through it instead of jumping to conclusions. Love will do that to a person, William observed casually. Layla blushed but didn't contradict him. What she felt for Elias had grown into something deep and true, something that both terrified and exhilarated her. I have something for you, she said, changing the subject. She brought out a small pot containing a flowering plant with delicate white blooms. It's a lily of the valley. They symbolize the return of happiness. I thought you might like to have it in memory of Lily. William's eyes filled with tears as he accepted the gift. She would have loved you, he said softly, almost as much as my son does. The bell over the door jingled, and Elias walked in, carrying 2 cups of coffee. He stopped short at the sight of his father, looking slightly embarrassed to have been caught in what had become his daily ritual, bringing Layla her favorite hazelnut latte. Dad, he said, I didn't know you'd be here. Clearly, William replied with an amused smile. Don't mind me, pretend I'm not even here. Elias rolled his eyes but crossed to Layla and gave her a quick kiss before handing her the coffee. Good morning. Good morning yourself, she replied, enjoying the simple domesticity of the moment. Your father was just admiring the shop. It looks amazing, Elias agreed. But then you always did have a gift for making things beautiful. The way he looked at her made it clear he wasn't just talking about the shop. Layla felt her heart swell with an emotion she was finally ready to name. I should be going, William said, rising from his chair. Mrs. Jenkins is making pot roast tonight, and I promised to pick up a special bottle of wine. We'll see you on Sunday, Layla asked. Their weekly family dinners had become a cherished tradition. Wouldn't miss it, William assured her, patting his son on the shoulder as he headed for the door. Take care of each other. After William left, Elias turned to Layla with a more serious expression. I have something to tell you. Layla's heart skipped a beat. Is everything okay? More than okay, Elias said. I've been making some changes at Hartley Investments, starting with Phoenix Holdings. What kind of changes? Layla asked cautiously. We're shifting focus, Elias explained. Instead of luxury, developments that push out local businesses, we're creating mixed-use spaces that prioritize small business retention and affordable housing. Layla stared at him in surprise. That's a big change. It's the right change, Elias said firmly. And that's not all. I'm establishing a small business grant program through the Lily Hartley Foundation, zero-interest loans and mentorship for entrepreneurs who might otherwise be overlooked by traditional lenders. Like my father was, Layla said softly. Elias nodded. Exactly. I can't undo the past, but I can help shape a better future, and I have you to thank for showing me the way. Me? Layla asked. I didn't do anything special. You did, Elias insisted. You reminded me that behind every spreadsheet, every property acquisition, every business deal, there are real people with dreams and struggles and dignity. You made me see them again, not as numbers, but as human beings. He took her hands in his. You changed me, Layla, for the better. Layla's eyes filled with tears, not because of his grand business plans or philanthropic initiatives, but because of the transformation she had witnessed in him from a man who had buried his heart beneath wealth and power to someone who was learning to be vulnerable again, to care deeply, to let love in. I love you, she said simply, the words she had been holding back for weeks finally breaking free. Joy spread across Elias's face. I love you too, more than I ever thought possible. As they sealed this new declaration with a kiss, Layla thought about the strange path that had led them here, a chance encounter at the market, an elderly man crying on a bench, a young woman who stopped to help despite her own troubles. Second chances were rare in life, but when they came, they were worth embracing with an open heart. 6 months later, the farmers' market was bustling with Sunday morning shoppers. At the center of the market, a small ceremony was taking place, the dedication of a new permanent structure that would house vendors year-round, protecting them from the elements and providing a stable location for their businesses. The Lily Hartley Marketplace William read from the bronze plaque, his voice thick with emotion. A place of connection, community, and second chances. Beside him stood Elias and Layla, their hands intertwined. They had worked together on this project, Elias providing the funding and business expertise, Layla coordinating with the vendors to ensure the design met their needs. "Your mother would be so proud," William said to his son, "of all of this, but mostly of you." Elias squeezed Layla's hand. "I couldn't have done it without her." "We did it together," Layla corrected gently. "That's what partners do." As the small crowd of vendors and community members applauded the official opening, Elias turned to face Layla fully. "Speaking of partners," he said, reaching into his pocket, "there's something I've been wanting to ask you." Time seemed to slow as he dropped to one knee, holding out a small velvet box. Inside was a ring, not a flashy diamond, but a delicate band of rose gold with tiny flowers engraved around a modest center stone. "Layla Carter," Elias said, his voice steady despite the nervousness she could see in his eyes. "You taught me how to open my heart again. You showed me what truly matters in life. Will you marry me?" Layla looked from the ring to Elias's hopeful face, then to William, who was watching with tears in his eyes and a knowing smile. She thought about how far they had all come since that first Sunday morning. The lonely old man, the struggling florist, the closed-off businessman, each of them carrying their own burdens, their own griefs, until chance and compassion brought them together. "Yes," she said, her voice ringing clear and sure. "Yes, I will." As Elias slipped the ring onto her finger and stood to embrace her, the market erupted in cheers and applause. In the middle of it all, William placed a hand on each of their shoulders, completing the circle of family they had formed. "Sometimes," he said with the wisdom of his years, "the market gives us exactly what we need when we need it most. We just have to be brave enough to reach out and take it." Layla smiled through her tears, knowing he wasn't just talking about vegetables and flowers. The market of life offered second chances to those willing to risk their hearts again, to believe that after loss and disappointment, new love could bloom. As Elias kissed her, sealing their promise to each other, Layla knew, with absolute certainty, that she had found her second chance, and this time she was holding on with both hands. Later that evening, as they walked hand in hand through the garden behind William's house, now their house, as the three of them had decided to live together, as a family, Elias stopped beneath a flowering cherry tree. "Happy?" he asked, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "More than I ever thought possible," Layla replied, echoing his words from months before. Above them, the cherry blossoms drifted down like gentle snow, covering the path with petals that whispered beneath their feet. Nature's reminder that even after the harshest winter, spring would come again, bringing new growth, new beauty, new beginnings. In the house, William watched them through the window, his heart full. Lily would have loved this, the family whole again, expanded and strengthened by new love. He could almost feel her presence beside him, sharing in his joy. "You were right, my love," he whispered to the empty room that didn't feel empty at all. "The heart does find its way home eventually." Outside, under the shower of blossoms, Elias and Layla sealed their future with a kiss, grateful for the market of second chances that had brought them together, and for the elderly man on a bench who had been brave enough to share his grief with a kind stranger on a Sunday morning. The end.